He walked into the restaurant like he owned the world. And maybe he did. A billionaire who believed money could buy everything. Until one dance shattered his pride. The woman who changed his life wasn't rich, wasn't famous. She was a black waitress. And her courage would rewrite his story forever. This isn't about wealth or power. It's about what happens when the heart meets humility, and how one quiet dance can break the walls around a man's soul. Stay till the end, because once you see what happened that night, you'll never forget it. The soft music of a grand piano floated through the air of La Rosa, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, where money whispered louder than words. Polished silver gleamed, laughter murmured in controlled tones, and every server moved like part of a choreographed ballet. Every server except one. Diana Johnson, the restaurant's only black waitress, worked quietly, efficiently, and invisibly. She'd learned that in places built for the powerful, invisibility was a form of protection. Tonight, a billionaire sat near the center window. Richard Montgomery, real estate king, investor, widower, known for the kind of silence that made others careful with their words. Across from him sat his 10-year-old son, Lucas, whose legs were locked in shining metal braces. It was their first dinner out since the accident 2 years ago. Lucas tapped his fingers on the table to the piano's rhythm, eyes full of something between courage and fear. Then, without warning, he stood, slowly, painfully, and turned toward Diana as she passed by with an empty tray. "Miss," he said, his voice trembling, "would you dance with me?" The entire restaurant froze. Conversations died. Glasses stopped mid-air. Even the pianist's fingers paused over the keys. Manager Thornton's voice sliced the silence. "Sir, control your son. This isn't a dance hall.
Our staff are not here to entertain children." Richard's jaw tightened.
Lucas, sit down." His words were low, restrained. He could feel eyes watching, the weight of judgment pressing on him harder than his son's braces. But Diana didn't move away. She looked at the boy's outstretched hand, at the room full of people waiting for her to retreat, and something inside her refused. Calmly, she unpinned her apron and placed it on the nearest table.
"I can't dance in an apron," she said softly.
Then she smiled at Lucas and took his hand. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Richard stood halfway, voice sharp. "What do you think you're doing?" Diana met his gaze. "Accepting an invitation, sir?" And before anyone could stop them, the pianist, sensing a story unfolding, began to play again, slower, gentler. Lucas took one uncertain step. The metal of his braces scraped against the marble floor. Every movement seemed to echo through the restaurant. But Diana didn't pull or lead. She simply adjusted her pace to his. Their rhythm was awkward, fragile, and utterly human. "She's finished," someone whispered. "She'll be fired by morning." But Richard wasn't listening to the whispers. For the first time in 2 years, he saw his son's face lit by something other than pain. Pride. A flicker of memory hit him. His late wife, Elizabeth, dancing with Lucas in their living room, her laughter wrapping around them like music.
"It's not about perfection," she had said.
"It's about connection." When Lucas completed 3 slow steps, Diana stopped. "Thank you for asking me," she told him with mock formality. It was an honor. She turned to leave, but Richard's voice halted her. "Wait." The room held its breath. "What's your name?" "Diana Johnson, sir." He repeated it quietly, as if memorizing it. Then, reaching into his jacket, he handed her a card. "My office, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Diana accepted it with steady fingers, though her heart trembled beneath her calm exterior. As she walked away, Lucas tugged his father's sleeve.
"Dad, why did you do that?"
Richard couldn't answer. He looked at his son, the child he'd kept hidden behind therapists and routines, and for the first time saw a small, determined human being demanding to live. The next morning, the sun flashed off the glass walls of Montgomery Tower. Diana stood in the lobby, her best navy blue skirt brushing her knees, a second-hand purse clutched to her chest. She felt the weight of 100 suits brushing past, people whose watches probably cost more than her rent. Diana Johnson to see Mr. Montgomery, she told the receptionist. Minutes later, an assistant appeared, Miss Winters, a woman polished like steel. "He's in a meeting. Follow me." As they walked, Winters glanced sideways.
He had you fired, didn't he?
Happens all the time. People like you forget your place. Diana stopped walking.
And where exactly is that?
Winters didn't answer. Her phone buzzed. "He'll see you now." Richard's office overlooked the city, sunlight blazing across skyscrapers. He stood with his back to the view, the image of control. "Miss Johnson," he said, motioning to a chair.
Thank you for coming. Silence filled the room, a billionaire's weapon.
Most people rushed to fill it. Diana didn't. She'd learned to wait. Finally, Richard spoke. "Do you have an education?" "Bachelor's in child development. Incomplete master's in special education," she replied evenly. Surprise flickered in his eyes.
And you work as a waitress? I work 3 jobs, waitressing, a bookstore on weekends, tutoring when I can. Richard opened a folder on his desk. Her life, printed in neat black ink.
"I looked you up. You founded something called Freedom Steps, a dance program for children with physical disabilities." Diana's voice softened. "With my sister, Zoe, 6 years ago. It's about to close," he added. "Yes, lack of funding tends to do that." He hesitated.
I'm not here to discuss your finances, Miss Johnson. I'm here to make you an offer. Diana raised an eyebrow. As a waitress in your home?
"No," Richard said firmly. "As a therapeutic companion for my son." She blinked, startled. "You have the best specialists in the country." None of them made him smile. "Yesterday you did."
I don't want another expert. I want someone who can do what you did.
"Follow, not lead." Diana studied him quietly. Beneath the wealth and power, she saw something raw. A father drowning in his own walls. "I can pay you 5 times what you make now," Richard added. She stood. "No." He stared, uncomprehending. "Excuse me?"
I don't work for people who see my color before my competence, she said calmly.
"And I don't fix emotions with money." Richard's composure cracked for the first time. "You're turning down a fortune out of pride?" "Out of dignity," she corrected. "Your son doesn't need someone paid to care. He needs space to lead his own steps." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Freedom Steps classes, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 p.m. If you want to bring Lucas, the first class is free." As she left, she passed Winters, who whispered, "You just turned down Richard Montgomery."
Are you insane?
Diana smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I'd rather be free than owned." Outside, the city hummed around her. She slipped the billionaire's card into her bag and exhaled. Somewhere above those glass towers, a man of power was realizing that one quiet black waitress had just refused to dance to his tune. And that's where the story was only beginning. 2 weeks passed. The doors of Freedom Steps creaked open to the sound of old jazz leaking from a dusty speaker. Diana balanced a box of donated shoes in her arms while children giggled across the worn wooden floor. Braces clinked, wheelchairs hummed, and joy filled the little studio that smelled of paint and hope. When the doorbell jingled, she turned and froze. Richard Montgomery stood there, expensive coat folded over his arm, and beside him, Lucas in a sweatshirt, his braces shining under the morning light. "You remembered?" Diana said quietly. Richard gave a half smile.
He didn't let me forget. Lucas waved shyly. I wanted to come. Diana knelt.
"And you're right on time. Here we follow one rule. Whoever steps on the floor leads." The boy's eyes widened. "Even me?" "Especially you," she said. The class began. Diana moved between children, guiding, encouraging, adjusting small movements. Lucas watched for a while, then slowly pushed himself up. His first step landed heavy, uneven.
A second one followed.
The other kids clapped. For the first time, his smile reached both eyes. Richard stood near the wall, watching something break inside him, his own silence. He had built walls of marble around grief, but here, in this small room with peeling paint, those walls began to crack. After class, Lucas asked, "Dad, can I come again?" Richard looked at Diana. She wiped sweat from her forehead, smiling faintly. "He's welcome any time," she said. Richard nodded. "He will." Weeks blurred into months. Each Tuesday and Thursday, the Billionaire's driver stopped outside the little studio. People in the neighborhood started whispering about the strange friendship between a billionaire's son and a waitress from the South Side. Diana didn't care. She watched Lucas transform, his steps stronger, laughter louder. And sometimes, when she caught Richard standing quietly by the door, she saw something new in his eyes. Not pity, not pride. Understanding. One evening after class, a storm swept across the city. Power flickered, rain hammered the windows. Diana locked up and stepped outside, only to find Richard waiting beside his car. "Need a ride?" he asked. She hesitated.
"You'll ruin your leather seats." "I'll take my chances." Inside the car, silence stretched between them, the kind that hums with things unspoken.
Finally, Richard said, "You were right that day."
"I did see your color before your competence." Diana looked out the window.
"And now? Now I see someone who gave my son his life back." She smiled.
"I didn't give it back."
He just needed someone to hand him the music. A few days later, Diana arrived at the studio to find reporters outside.
Cameras flashed, voices shouted, "Miss Johnson!"
"Is it true the Montgomery Foundation is buying this building?" She pushed through the crowd. Inside, Richard was waiting, a folder in hand. "What is this?" she demanded. He handed her a paper, a full renovation plan, a grant for equipment, scholarships, staff. Her breath caught. "You can't. This was supposed to be a place for freedom, not charity." "It isn't charity," he said. "It's partnership." He opened another folder. Inside was a document titled Freedom Steps Foundation. "I want to expand it," he continued. "Branches in every city." "You'll direct it." Diana stared at him, torn between gratitude and fear. "Richard, you're turning my little dream into an empire." He shook his head.
"No, Diana, you're turning my empire into something human." Before she could answer, Lucas ran in, drenched from the rain. "Dad, the news said you bought the building."
"Does that mean this is ours forever?" Richard smiled softly. "It means it's yours, son." Months later, Freedom Steps Manhattan reopened, a glass-walled studio filled with light. On opening night, families gathered, music played, and children danced in ways that defied gravity itself. As speeches ended, Lucas rolled onto the floor in his braces. He looked at Diana and said, "Will you dance with me again?" This time she laughed.
"Only if you lead." When the piano began, he stepped forward, steady, proud, leading her across the floor while the audience watched in silence.
Every step was imperfect, every move sacred. Richard stood at the edge of the crowd, emotion pressing against his throat. He remembered the first night he'd seen her in that restaurant, the courage it took to hold his son's hand while the world judged her. Now the same woman had built a world where judgment had no place. When the music faded, the crowd erupted in applause. Lucas bowed clumsily, laughing. Diana wiped a tear. Richard stepped onto the stage, placed a hand on her shoulder, and whispered, "You changed more than his life." "You changed mine." Diana looked at him. "No, Richard. You just started listening." That night, after everyone left, Richard returned alone. He stood by the window, watching the reflection of the dance floor. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about profit, deadlines, or deals. He was thinking about how a stranger had taught him to see, not through numbers, but through rhythm. He picked up the studio flyer. Freedom Steps, a place where every child learns to lead. Below it, a small line in Diana's handwriting read, "Dedicated to Elizabeth Montgomery, who taught her family that the heart always knows the next step." Richard closed his eyes. Somewhere in the distance, He could hear the faint echo of the piano, the same melody his wife once danced to. And this time, he smiled. In a world obsessed with power and perfection, one dance reminded a father what truly matters: courage, kindness, and the freedom to move at your own rhythm. Sometimes,
A single act of kindness doesn't just change a moment.
it changes generations. Because in every dark tale there's always a light, if only someone dares to dance toward it. This is Black Tale Stories, where every shadow tells a lesson. In a world full of noise, some stories whisper truths we're too afraid to face. If this tale gave you chills, made you think, or touched your heart, don't let it fade away. Subscribe to Black Tale Stories for more real horror stories, dark emotional tales, and haunting mysteries that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Like, comment, and share. Because every story deserves to be heard, and some deserve to be remembered forever.